We thought we'd just have a quick catch up on few things about blockchain,
Yep.
some benefits and challenges and ethics as well.
Ooh.
So something like a few interesting, like these are get pointed out by a few companies, few people who come and see us. So we thought it'd be good to have a quick chat about those. And so first question: what are some of the benefits of adopting blockchain technology? So the benefits of adopting blockchain technology.
Uh, there are many benefits:
Mm-hmm.
security, transparency, efficiency, traceability, privacy. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
Some of those, however, are double-edged swords.
Mm-hmm. If you take the privacy
Yep.
part, right? When you look at the benefits for privacy with the blockchain, now this thing called ZK proof,
Yep.
which is zero knowledge proof.
Yeah.
So which means now it's not a blockchain, but it's algorithm. So it's like how can you can prove something happened without revealing,
You can prove that something is what it is
Yeah.
without knowing what it is.
without knowing what it is, right?
Yes.
And then you put the blockchain into it, then you bring the blockchain, the verification, don't trust but verify
Yeah.
aspect to it, and that makes it like, okay, it's on the
Yeah.
blockchain, and that makes it I see that's a huge privacy benefit that
Oh,
businesses.
absolutely. I mean, I would probably get this long without wanting to get too deep into it. Was actually a friend of ours
Yeah.
that had me read a paper ages and ages ago that went back to the old Middle Eastern times, and it was almost like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves type deal, where there was a thing of caves, like a whole, like, what do you call it when there's a whole heap of caves running off each other?
I don't know, a
Whatever,
terrace
like,
cave.
oh,
I don't know.
I don't know. But it was one of those things where, and in the story, it explains that this guy knows where the secret passage is
Mm-hmm.
without actually revealing where the secret passage is.
Got it.
So it was kind of like, at any one of these particular forks, it was like you could choose to go right or left, or they would tell him to go either right
Yes.
or left, and he would still appear at this other spot. And the point of the story is that it explains in simple terms how zero knowledge works.
Yeah.
So you know that this guy knows his way out of the caves without you knowing what the secret of the caves is.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah. Cool. So what are the other benefits? So that's one of the privacy benefits. And if you
Yep.
talk about like security.
Well, the security would come, and this all, of course, depends on what data you're putting on chain.
Of course.
It could be to verify, like it could be the hash of data that goes up there, not the data itself. So
yeah. So the integrity.
So that would prove the authenticity of data.
Yep.
And therefore, in that instance, keep the data private. But as far as securing it goes, that's a whole other level. That's where cryptography comes in.
Actually, it's a good point. Today we attended the ICT forum and spoke about ChatGPT, right? And one of the members I was talking to, he was saying, look, now with AI, you got a lot of deep fakes.
Yeah.
And that means like security camera footage that could be altered.
Yeah.
So how cool it would be that now this is not for all the camera footage. This is only maybe this could be for high security areas, for example. Now, if that camera footage get live streamed into a place that get encrypted and get stored in the blockchain, and then you get hashed and stored in the blockchain.
Yeah.
That way, you are guaranteeing that authenticity and the integrity of that footage.
You've essentially got two choices. One is to try and store all of the data somewhere securely, which is very, very costly, especially when you're talking blockchain because of the amount of data. So, yeah, the idea would be to hash that data, store the hash on the blockchain because it therefore becomes immutable, which can then prove that that footage hasn't been altered.
Yeah.
However, if that footage gets altered, you could prove that it's been altered.
That's been altered.
But where's the original footage?
Yes.
So there's
Yeah.
still security concerns to consider in that instance, I guess, because you wouldn't want the video to go missing altogether.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Next question. What are some of the challenges facing the adoption of the blockchain technology?
The biggest one that comes to my mind, well, the first one that comes to my mind each time, is education.
Yeah,
So
that's where it all starts, right?
It really does. And the confusion or the misconception that a lot of people have that blockchain is crypto and,
Yes.
vice versa, that sort of thing. So there's a huge knowledge gap there. And I'm not suggesting that everybody go and learn what blockchain is to be able to use it. Sure, if that's something you're interested in, then go and do that. But for general uptake of the populace, it needs to be seamless. It needs to be behind the scenes. They don't need to know that it's blockchain.
Yep.
They just need to know that it performs the way that it does and that it solves a problem.
I guess when it comes to e-commerce, same thing, right? All these the data or the products are saved in a database, and the orders are saved in database, and that's how it get tracked and all that.
Yeah.
But people don't know how that order is saved. It's like my order is there.
That's right.
I need to be shipped, and that's all it is. So same thing with the blockchain. So the challenges that I would you touched a really good point about education, and the people who make those decisions are the owners, founders, the C-suite executives, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't have the understanding of the blockchain, like, oh, see, cryptocurrency, or we don't want to be in the cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
We are not into that, because I think people still believe, some people believe that crypto is a Ponzi because they don't understand it. They don't want to spend their time learning what that is, right? So how can these leaders, the founders, how can we educate them on the blockchain space? Like,
well, I guess use cases. I mean, as the technology gets simpler, it'll be easier for the general public. So the general public, you don't have to educate. But you're right. The people that need to move their businesses and processes to something better, like it provided it gives them a benefit, then yes, they need to, I guess, educate themselves somewhat. But it's one of those things where the benefits will outweigh any negative connotations that they may have. So if it gives you that absolute proof of data integrity that we were just talking about, for example, and that's critical to your business, then that gives you a leg up on your competition and will well and truly be worthwhile doing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And the other part is, as much as the education, the other challenge is the investment that goes into this space, the blockchain space, because we know there are bull markets, there are bear markets. I never heard of these two words until I really got involved, right? So during the bull market, when the markets are high, the crypto is doing well, there's a lot more money flooding in. And when there is not enough, we're seeing like a lot of projects, good projects, died because not enough liquidity being.
And a lot of that goes to exactly what we were just saying. And it's part of the confusion that people have between blockchain and crypto. Your bull and bear markets are a market term, right, for whether they're going well or not. And that's referring to the crypto market. None of it impacts blockchain. You could be using it for supply chain or anything else that you're, that's, I guess, beneficial to your business and processes. But it's got nothing to do with the market. But people tend to only want to invest in this technology if crypto is doing well, which is completely bizarre as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I think that's super important. So really the investment should come into building technology on top of the blockchain, rather than looking at one of the projects that has been, or one of the use cases that's been built on top of the blockchain. So it's like saying, okay, I'm going to put all my money on a Shopify website, for example, just Shopify. Instead of, there's Amazon here, let's look at Amazon or a different, another industry. So I guess that's what we had to educate people on and understand that.
It's almost to the point where, and I use this analogy quite a lot, where if blockchain is the internet and crypto is just one of the applications or things that runs on top of it, treating it like the internet, it'd be like saying, I'm going to go back to faxing people because I don't want to use email because nobody's using Facebook anymore. That's how much sense that makes when people aren't investing in blockchain technology just because of the crypto market.
Cool. So we spoke about education, investment as a challenge. Are there any more challenges that you can think of?
Oh, there are many.
Let's go for another one.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're doing. If you're using a public blockchain, then you don't have to worry about infrastructure. You're not concerned with consensus mechanisms yourself because they're already in place. But then you have to consider the opposite side of that coin, which is depending on what data you're putting up there, it comes back to the privacy, cost of transactions and things of that nature. So in the terms of using something like Hyperledger Fabric, which would be a permissioned blockchain, then that's okay for one company if everybody within the company is tracking its stuff in there, but there's no provenance for any of those objects that you're storing on chain unless your suppliers are involved. And the benefit to consumers would mean that it would need to flow back down the other side.
Makes sense. Yep. Cool. Thank you. All right. Next question. What are some of the ethical considerations around blockchain adoption?
First one again is privacy. So while it could be used for privacy, and it could be used, well, not used. If it's misused, then privacy becomes an issue, I guess. So you can cryptographically protect data, as we said, but the important thing to remember is that it's immutable. So I'm a big proponent of don't put anything online that you're not happy for everybody else on the planet to know. But when it comes to blockchain, it depends on who's putting your data on chain. I mean, it's the same on the internet, full stop. The latest Latitude Finance hack, for example, and people's data gets put up online, then that was a third party putting your private data online, and that's what people get freaked out about because then it gets used by bad actors. However, if somebody's storing your data on a public blockchain, so it might be personal medical records or something of that nature, that's not real cool. That's a problem. But if it was a permissioned blockchain that was managed by a small group of other hospital, government entities, something of that nature, provided you trusted them, then that's fine. Or better yet, you control the data and you control who has access to it, and you can revoke that access at any time.
So with regards to this, like we got GDPR.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and they say like, okay, delete my information.
Yeah, delete it. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Depending on what data is up on, like if it's on a chain like that, then no,
you can't delete it.
Not going anywhere.
Right. So it's super important for any business who's picking, okay, we want to go with the blockchain. You have to pick and choose how you want to use it, where you can use it, and what data you're going to use, put on chain. So it can be even, if you want to put customer data, okay, look at like a way of hashing that information and
anonymizing it as you would.
Anonymizing, 100%, exactly. So that's important. Anything else?
Well, a flow on from that would then be the governance and accountability of data, I guess. So until, I mean, as we both know, new legislation comes in thick and fast at the moment in this industry. So I guess there needs to be particular guidelines that people have to adhere to so that that type of thing doesn't happen. So, governance and, the legal requirements would be another one for me.
All right. Yeah. And can I throw a little bit of a curveball in there?
Sure.
So we have these things at the moment being discussed in each country called CBDCs.
Yes.
And for people who are thinking, what are CBDCs? Central bank digital currencies. Now, there's people who love it, people who hate it. I haven't come across anyone who's type of in the middle, like, oh yeah, it makes sense, because people who doesn't like it, they really understand, they can see how that can be misused. We can start it, but they can really see how it can be misused. And people who love it, they see the other benefit of, because like, oh, everyone knows about my things anyway, so it'll be so easy for me to do transactions if they're like in the business world, doing cross-border transactions. Oh my God, I just do it now, and then in however number of seconds, it shows up in the other end, and it's going to streamline the process, less transaction fees, and all that. So, in your mind, how would something like a CBDC could play out when it comes to ethics out there?
It's there's a couple of things, I guess. One, again, back to the privacy. Although it might be a misconception that people have now that what they're spending their money on is private, because unless it's cash transaction, it can be traced. Obviously, there are chargebacks on credit cards. Everybody's tapping and going. Each time you do that, if you're using your phone, it's generating a pretend card number that it uses, so that it's not using the authentic card number for protection of that sort of stuff. So that's a big one. So obviously, being able to track anything that you spend stuff on. But I guess then it's because it's central, and then maybe that's the issue. At this stage, okay, if Bank A puts a block on your card and says, no, you're not spending any money, you can go to Bank B, okay? But when we're talking something central and it's controlled by a single entity, if that entity all of a sudden decides that, no, you're not allowed to spend your money on X over here, then they can stop that transaction from happening. And that's probably my bigger concern.
Yeah.
I could give you specific examples if you would like.
Why not? Yes.
So if you were talking like there's anybody that's on, like, say, a government,
like NDIS, for example,
or I'm just talking government payments.
Okay. Yes.
And I won't be specific about what types, but they can try and limit what items you're allowed to purchase with the money that they've provided you. Now, I understand that their reasoning for it is trying to, for the benefit of the beneficiary in this instance, but at what point is that amount of control too much?
Yeah, because cross-border, I guess as a government, they had to be accountable for the taxpayers, because as taxpayers, they're like, okay, look, where did my money go? And then the government, I guess, has a responsibility to make sure that the funds are being spent accordingly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can, like you said, restrict people from doing what they need. Be like, okay, look, I got the money, but I can't spend on what I want.
It really is an ethical dilemma. It truly is, because nobody should have that amount of control imposed on them, as far as I'm concerned. But in worst case scenario here, let's just say there's a family that's receiving a government payment that has 2 children. Should that money be spent on, gambling, alcohol, things of that nature, and not feeding the children? Well, no, you're going to want to make sure the kids are fed, but should you be imposing that control on those people? I think there might be other ways to do it, is all I'm saying.
As humans, I think we should be given some choice, hey?
Yes.
Cool. All right, next question. How can businesses and organizations best prepare for the adoption of blockchain technology?
Education.
Yep.
Identifying whether there are particular use cases for blockchain or what advantages it would give them in business.
Yep.
Making sure they're adhering to any data privacy requirements. Education, privacy tend to come up a lot, but they are very big, important things. Any legal or regulatory requirements, and certainly make sure that whatever you're building is going to be interoperable with whatever it is, like suitable for purpose, I guess. As the example I gave before, if you were using something for supply chain tracking, that's all well and good internally. So, you might go off and invest into education and build this thing. But if you've got 14 suppliers and they all say not interested in using it, then you would need to get their buy-in prior to that. So, but that again can be done as a group effort and collaboration, and could therefore have cost savings, as well as them providing all of the benefits that blockchain does.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned education here again, because this technology at the moment is still not really out there. Like a lot of people are like, what is blockchain? They understand it's some sort of a chain connecting two things, many things, but they really don't understand what that technology does, right? So, very high level, what is the blockchain?
Oh, it depends who I'm explaining this to, but in simple terms, it's information, data. Okay. Now, each block of data, hence the blockchain, has hash against it, which is essentially, I don't know the best way to describe a hash even.
Yeah. It's like compresses into like a few characters, like unique characters.
Yeah, it's like a fingerprint of that data is probably the best way to describe it. Okay. And then the fingerprint of that data is used in the next block.
As a key to encrypt, to lock that data.
So what that does is that chain, it's like a chain of evidence, I guess, with signatures on it. Maybe that's a better explanation. I'm just making this up as I go. But if any one block of data is changed, not only do you have, like, obviously whatever governance mechanism is being used on that blockchain, if it's a 51%, type of thing, like 51% of the nodes have to agree that that data is correct. But if any one of them's changed, they get ignored. But even if it got past that, it would then make all of the previous blocks
all invalid.
Yeah. So it's to maintain data integrity, which then comes back into the immutability of it.
Yes.
As to why, if Bob Smith's data is up there in block number 4, and he says, "I need you to delete my data," you can't do that. The reason for not being able to delete it is because it then changes the structure of that data, which then impacts the entire chain.
So you have to undo the whole chain, and that's where the computing power.
You'd be going back and starting again every 30 seconds as each of these requests came in.
So by you explaining that, for me, something that came to my mind straight away is like when you said about it's a ledger. So anyone who has for me, the industry that comes to my head straight away is like the finance sector, like loan applications, the insurance, the underwriting of insurance, and even the audits that you do on companies, and these can be on the blockchain because they are ledgers. And even like when it comes to forensic accountancy, what they do is they audit a company. So ISO standards, all that. For my head, that's where it goes to. It goes to it's almost like a ledger. It's a standard. All that can go on a blockchain. So
absolutely, but it's not just that can go on a blockchain. Obviously, people think finance. A lot of that again comes from the whole cryptocurrency is blockchain and it's financial. But real estate records, as you sort of touched on there, but then also like automotive, aerospace, manufacturing,
of course,
and I'm not just talking supply chain there. We were like talking about manufacturing equipment and the service
history
and things of that nature. So God forbid anybody ever got injured at a workplace, using a piece of industrial machinery. But then how do you prove that that machine had the appropriate service levels and upkeep and was done, on the appropriate times for you to not be liable? Well, I mean, that information can be tracked with IoT devices. It can alert you. It not only will it save lives and injuries, but it'll save downtime, which then saves money for companies.
And also the insurance premiums.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool. And for example, now if a company has been like a real estate company, been operational since 2000, right? So that's almost like 2 decades ago, right? And now this new technology, is here. How could they prepare as an organization to adopt blockchain? Like very high level, we don't know their processes, but as a general blanket, if we talk about it, how could they adopt?
Well, the first thing to do is to go and speak to somebody knowledgeable on the subject to understand if there are valid use cases for blockchain for that particular industry or company.
But how do they know the person they're talking to is blockchain savvy. They might be not talking to someone who's like, they're like, oh yeah, blockchain, don't worry about that. That's not going to. And that's what happened to me when someone told me about Bitcoin. I'm like, yeah, no, that's a fad. Forget about it, right? 2009.
Yeah.
So as a business owner, if they go to someone and they're like, okay, what do you think? Like, oh, nah, it's because they go to them thinking that they're trustworthy. Because you're like, oh, why would you go and ask someone else who's not? So I just want to give them like more like the pointers. If we take the immutability, the transparency, and the decentralization of the blockchain, how could a business use it as a carbon, like a trace, like on top of their, almost like overlaying it on top of their business, and like, okay, so my business has these things, I can see the potential, so it is somewhat compatible.
Well, the business may not have those things, but may benefit from having those things.
Yeah.
It might simplify processes. It might simply, like from the immutability standpoint, protect the integrity of the data.
Yeah.
Okay. There's many use cases, but the first thing they should do is either try to educate themselves, or, like I said, go and speak to somebody that knows. And it's funny that you said, but how do they know that that person knows?
Yes.
Well, that's another use case for blockchain and putting accreditation data on it so that you know. So if I can just quickly digress and go into the real estate example of, besides fractionalizing real estate, putting real estate contracts on chain, disintermediating the conveyances and things of that nature. But if you're talking about the service history of vehicles, right? So, Bob's Ute, all its service history, if it's ever had a recall, is on there. Bob happens to be an electrician. So Bob's accreditation details are on chain, okay? So that you know that Bob's a registered Sparky and good to work on your house. And any work that's done on your house is then on chain, like a service history for a vehicle, but for a property, and everything is traceable back. So again, how do you know? Well, that's a use case for blockchain.
Yeah. So then even come to a point that and again, like where do we keep in mind, like even when you're saying these things, obviously you can't implement it as is. You have to think of the privacy issues, like when you're putting your property addresses or people's names. Otherwise, you don't want anyone out there to work it out. Jim Smith lives at this address, for example, and there's always that has to become true. But like, I understand exactly where you're coming from, and this is what the blockchain is really good, because it removes the trust factor and it introduces a verification factor, right? And I think any business that or organization that looking to implement the blockchain, if they look at these key aspects of the blockchain, I'm pretty sure any business can find a use case. But you really don't want to go and it's okay if your business doesn't need the blockchain, like a magazine, like a publisher,
Well, maybe they do, or at least adjacent to it. So for media, for example, like, photographers taken, like, these marvelous shots, you've seen some of the brilliant ones that are in Time magazine and things like that. Some of those are literally timeless, if you'll pardon the pun. But who was it that had that, like, owned that original photograph, like the provenance of that? So if I hash that image, for example, and that hash is stored up on the blockchain, then I can then prove that that was an image that I took, that I have the rights for, so that, when it's being used in publication, it's covered.
Yeah.
We had a discussion a while back, and if there are a lot of industries or businesses that aren't even nearly related that would still benefit from blockchain, even if it's not a direct use by that company themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. If concert tickets were NFTs and on chain, not only then you have your ticket, obviously, but if part of that information, even if it's just the number of people attending, is public, then the food vendor in the food truck knows where he's going to have the best, bang for buck to park his truck that evening.
Of course.
So food truck you wouldn't think would have to be on chain, but it could certainly benefit from other data on chain. So there's going to be a lot of flow on from what happened.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Craig, for your time.
Thank you.
And it's a good catch up. And this conversation never tires me because you get to learn more, right? The more we talk, the more areas we touch, the more use cases and case studies. So gets us going. And I just want to just put it out there as well. You could be spending so much time in this space, but there's still so much that you don't know as well, right? It's a constant learning process, and we hope that's what we brought to our community.
That's what's interesting about when people come in with something, is that it can spark either thoughts that, or ideas that you would not have normally had, or lead us to explore and educate ourselves so much more.
All right. On that note, thank you, Craig.